Have you ever refused to help someone when helping them would have been very easy? Maybe they asked for food. Maybe they asked for a little help, and you said no, not because you could not help, but because you simply did not want to. Many people believe small actions do not matter, but life remembers every action, even the smallest one. This is the story of a man who closed his door to a hungry child. At that moment, he believed it was nothing, but years later, that one small decision returned to him in a way he never expected, and it changed his life forever. So listen carefully to this story, because its lesson might stay with you for a long time. Many years ago, there was a small village surrounded by green fields and dusty roads. Dev was the richest man in the village. He owned large farms, he owned many animals, and behind his house, he had a huge storage room filled with sacks of rice, wheat, and corn. People often said, Dev will never go hungry in his life. But Dev had a problem. His heart was not as big as his house. He did not like sharing. He believed every grain of food belonged only to him. Sometimes poor villagers came to his house, asking for help, but most of the time, he refused. He always had the same answer. Everyone must solve their own problems. One hot afternoon, the village sun burned brightly in the sky. Dust moved slowly across the road. Dev was sitting outside his house, counting money. Suddenly, he heard a small voice. Uncle, excuse me. Dev looked up. A thin little boy was standing near the gate. The boy's clothes were old. His face looked tired, and his stomach growled softly. The boy spoke again. Uncle, I am very hungry. My mother is sick, and we have no food today. Can you give me a little bread? Dev stared at him silently. Behind Dev's house were hundreds of sacks filled with grain. He had more food than he could ever eat. For a moment, the boy waited with hope in his eyes. But Dev's face became hard. No, he said coldly. I cannot feed every hungry person in the village. The boy lowered his head. Please, just one piece of bread, he said quietly. But Dev stood up angrily. I said no. Go away. You are disturbing me. The boy looked at him one last time. There was sadness in his eyes, but he did not argue. He simply said softly, Okay, Uncle. Then he turned around and slowly walked away down the dusty road. Dev watched him leave. For a moment, something inside his heart felt strange, but he quickly ignored it. It is not my problem, he muttered, and he went back to counting his money. Days passed, then weeks. Dev continued his life as usual. His farms grew well, his storage rooms stayed full, and he rarely thought about the hungry boy again. But life has a strange way of remembering things we forget. A few years later, something unexpected happened. A terrible storm destroyed many farms in the village. Heavy rain flooded the fields. Dev lost a large part of his crops. At first, he thought it was only bad luck, but the problems did not stop there. Soon after that, a disease spread among his animals. Many of them died. Dev started losing money. Then one day, his business partner from the city cheated him. The money Dev had invested disappeared. Within 2 years, everything changed. The rich man of the village was no longer rich. His large house had to be sold. His farms were gone. Even his storage room of grain became empty. Now Dev had to search for work, like everyone else. But it was not easy. People remembered how he treated them before. Many doors stayed closed for him. One cold morning, Dev walked along a road that led to a nearby town. He was hungry, very hungry. His pockets were empty. He had not eaten properly in 2 days. Finally, he saw a small bakery shop. On the corner of a street, warm bread smell filled the air. His stomach growled loudly. Dev slowly walked inside. Behind the counter stood a young man wearing a white apron. The young man looked kind and calm. Dev spoke softly. Sir, I am looking for work. I can clean, carry boxes, anything. The young man looked carefully at Dev's face. For a moment, he stayed silent. Then he asked gently, "Are you from the nearby village?" Dev nodded. "Yes, I used to live there." The young man continued looking at him. Then something surprising happened. The young man smiled, a soft, knowing smile. "Do you remember me?" he asked. Dev looked confused. He studied the young man's face, but he could not remember. The young man spoke again. "Many years ago, I came to your house. I was a small boy. I asked you for a piece of bread." Suddenly, Dev felt his heart stop. A memory returned to him like a sudden storm. The dusty road, the hungry child, the words he spoke. "Go away." Dev's face turned pale. You were that boy," he whispered. The young man nodded slowly. "Yes." Dev lowered his head. Shame filled his chest. "I am very sorry," he said quietly. "I had so much food, but I refused to help you. I was selfish. I was proud." He could not look into the young man's eyes. For a moment, the bakery became silent. Then the young man walked to a shelf and picked up a warm loaf of bread. He placed it gently in Dev's hands. "Eat first," he said kindly. Dev looked surprised. "You are not angry with me?" he asked. The young man shook his head. "I remember that day very clearly," he said. "I walked away hungry, but that moment taught me something important. It taught me that I never wanted to become a person who refuses help." He smiled again. "That is why I opened this bakery. So, no child in this town would go hungry." Dev's eyes filled with tears. The young man continued speaking. "And if you're willing to work honestly, you can start working here tomorrow." Dev could not believe what he was hearing. Years ago, he had closed his door to this boy. But today, that same boy was opening a door for him. Dev held the bread tightly in his hands. At that moment, he understood something very important. Karma does not always return with anger. Sometimes it returns with a lesson that changes your heart. From that day forward, Dev worked hard in the bakery. He greeted customers politely, and whenever a hungry child came to the shop, Dev was always the first person to give them bread, because now he knew the truth. Life always returns what we give to others. If you give cruelty, cruelty will find its way back. But if you give kindness, kindness can return when you need it the most. So remember this simple truth. The way you treat people today may become the way life treats you tomorrow. And before you leave, tell me something in the comments. Do you believe kindness always comes back? Write "kindness returns" in the comments if you believe good actions always find their way back. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this, stories that remind us about life, choices, and karma, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because sometimes one simple story can change the way we live forever. Thank you for watching.